What is up, guys? Prodigy here. Thank you very much for watching my video. And in this one, I got you guys Arc 3.0. Bungie just recently released on their site a post from the developer team talking about some of the Arc stuff coming in a couple of days. If you guys didn't know, they recently reworked Solar, they recently reworked Void, and now is Arc subclass turn. They're going to be changing and upgrading and buffing some things for the Warlock, for the Hunter, and for the Titan, but all towards the Arc subclass. So the first thing we got here from the developer team is that Arc is really just go fast and hit stuff. We call it the whole W subclass. Everything is built around moving forward and enabling aggression and those abilities. But that's the first thing we got talking about Arc, is nothing but just going forward, hitting things, and just being aggressive. So what I went ahead and did is I highlighted a bunch of stuff that I thought that was important or had some sort of meaning towards the update. But if you guys are interested in reading the whole entire thing, link will be in the description. Moving on to the next thing, we got lighting up new abilities. And the team, before moving on to explaining all the details regarding the subclass and the aspects and the fragments, they want to teach you a couple of things regarding buffs and debuffs that are built into the subclass. So the first one we got is a new buff called Amplified. And Amplified is a perk that is literally just built into the tree. You don't have to turn it on, you don't have to put it, you don't have to activate it. It's not a mod, it's not an aspect, it's not a it's just something that's built into all the Arc classes. And it mentions here that an amplified guardian is faster, both in terms of movement speeds and in terms of their weapon handling, and more agile, able to perform long slides that can function as a devastating setup for some of the attacks that follow. And the way that you turn on this perk, the way that you activate Amplified, is by rapidly defeating targets with any arc damage or with any equipped aspects or fragments. They also mention here that after sprinting for a few seconds as an amplified guardian, you will gain another boost in speed, and supposedly this is the fastest they can make their sprint animation. Like, supposedly this is probably the fastest we have ever sprinted in the game, and this is the boost that you're gonna get after sprinting once you're amplified. Remember, once you're amplified, you're gonna get a boost of movement speed, you're gonna get a boost of weapon handling, you're gonna be more agile, you're gonna have like longer slides. But they mentioned that after being amplified and you start sprinting, you're gonna gain another boost in speed, which is gonna be probably the fastest we've ever seen, and you're gonna gain a sizable PvE damage resistance buff and enabling an even longer slide ability. So again, they really want you to move. So this is what they want you to know before we get into the details of the subclass, at least for the buff side. Now we're gonna get into the debuff side. So moving on to the debuff side, we have two debuffs to be exact. We have the debuff called Blind, which a lot of us are probably familiar with, and we have the debuff called Jolt. For Blind, opponents in PvE won't be able to see and will also be disoriented, unable to fire their weapons. In PvP, blinded opponents will have their screen whitened out and their HUD removed for a short period of time, alongside with the ringing audio effect simulating the ringing in the ears after a flashbang explodes. So that's what's going to happen in PvE when blinded, and in PvE and in PvP when blinded. And for Jolted, it says here, jolted opponents who are damaged will periodically send silver chains of lightning out to nearby enemies, damaging them in the process. So those are the two debuffs that we have in the game, at least coming into the game for Arc 3.0, which is in a couple of days. And the final thing they want to mention before getting into the details of the subclasses and the fragments and all the changes they did to Hunter, Warlock, and Titan is that now all three classes, or all like classes, are going to have what the Warlock has, which is the iconic traces, which is, I believe, when you defeat targets, when you defeat enemies, when you defeat whatever it is, they're gonna have these little, these little lights that drop on the floor, and then when you collect them, it gives you, your abilities. So that's gonna be available for all the classes now. So the first Arc 3.0 subclass we're going to be talking about is the Hunter. And the first thing they mention here is the Hunter Arc Staff Super is returning. I didn't know it was gone. With Arc Staff, hunters will be able to block and deflect projectiles with a press of a button, as well as perform an armored dodge, where upon dodging, the hunter is more resistant to incoming damage. And according to the developers, one super was just not enough, so the hunter's also receiving a brand new super called the Gathering of the Storm. And they mention here that the hunter is gonna leap into the air, hurling their staff into the ground or into an unlucky enemy like a spear. Upon impact, the staff emits a damaging burst that jolts nearby enemies. Soon after, a giant bolt of lightning strikes the staff and overcharges it, creating a large damage zone around it for several seconds. While overcharged, the staff sends out arc of lightning to damage enemies that move near it. So that's a, I don't know, that seems like a well, a slam, and more. Like, wow, what a super we got coming into the game for the hunter. Alrighty, so moving on to the hunter aspects. Aspects for the hunter, we have 3 here, and the first one is flow state. Defeating a jolted opponent causes you to become amplified. When amplified, the hunter's dodge will recharge faster and make you more resistant to damage, and you have a quicker reload times. The second aspect we have is Tempest Strike. Allows the hunter to perform a sliding melee that launches an arc wave along the ground, dealing significant damage and jolting enemies in its path. And the third aspect for the hunter is Lethal Current. And it says here, after dodging, the hunter's melee lunge range is increased and their next melee attack jolts the target and creates a damaging lightning aftershock. When used with the Arc Staff Super, after dodging, the hunter's next staff light attack hits twice. In addition, hitting a jolted enemy with a melee attack will blind them. So that's a lot for that one, for the Lethal Current. It does a lot for your regular melee, and it does more for your super, so make sure you're using that properly if you're going to be selecting that aspect on Arc 3.0. Alrighty, so the next thing we got is the Warlock, and what the developers have to say regarding the Warlock is that the Warlock's whole thing is that being amplified modifies their ability. It powers them up. So the way I can explain this to you guys, think about the Titan's Heart of Inmost Light. Like when you use your abilities, it kind of powers them up. So whenever you're amplified, this powers up your abilities. And the first aspect that we have for the Warlock is Arc Soul. The Warlock casts a rift to create an Arc Soul that will assist the player in battle. Allies who passes through the rift will also earn an Arc Soul. The rift charges faster when allies are near. While amplified, any Arc Soul you have or gain is supercharged, increasing its rate of fire. So the second aspect we have for the Warlock is Lightning Surge, and it says here the Warlock activates their melee while sliding to transform into a ball of lightning and teleport forward, calling down a field of lightning bolts at the exit point that jolts targets. So we're going to be able to teleport into lightning with the Warlock. I don't know, that's going to be probably cool for PvP or something. The next aspect, or the final aspect, third aspect for the Warlock we have is Electrostatic Mind. Arc ability kills and kills on arc debuffed enemies create iconic traces. When collected any iconic trace, you become amplified. So not bad at all. So when you collect any iconic trace, you become amplified. And remember, being amplified is really good for the Warlock. Moving on to the Titan. And it says here, one of the biggest changes coming to the Arc Titan is the new thruster class ability. Yes, believe it or not, the Titan is getting a new class ability. And it says here, by double tapping a button, the Titan bursts into their throttle direction at speed, performing a quick first-person evade comparable in distance to the Hunter's dodge. So again, you're just gonna burst into their throttle direction at speed in a quick first-person evade. Again, don't know what's that gonna. I can't even imagine it, to be honest. It says here, by double tapping a button, the Titan burst in their throttle direction at speed. So we're just gonna like do a little shoulder charge, a little mini shoulder charge, depending on what direction we were already moving towards, and perform a quick first-person evade comparable in this. Again, they're just comparing the distance. They're not comparing animation or anything, just the distance that you travel with. So it's probably not going to be that much, but it's going to be a quick evade. Might be really cool for the Titan. Can't wait to see it in action. The next thing they talk about for the Titan is the melee attacks, and they're talking about Titans will retain their seismic strike shoulder charge, which blinds enemies. I don't think it blinded enemy before. I used to use it a lot and never blinded enemies, so I think that's something new, which blinds enemies. Performing a seismic strike while amplified will increase the radius of the blind, and the blinding effect will last longer. So very similar to the Warlock. If you are amplified, it's going to give you like a little buff to your melee in a way. Ballistic Slam also returns, where players can slam the ground after sprinting in the air. Sprint after sprinting in the air? They wrote that properly? I think they miswrote that. Slam also returns, where players can slam the ground after sprinting in the air. I mean, I know you can't sprint in the air, but I think they mean by holding your sprint in the air, creating a damaging explosion upon impact. But yeah, you can't. I don't think anybody can sprint in the air, but I think like once you like run off the ground, you need to continuously hold your sprint, because if not, you lose your sprint. I think that's what they meant by that. Those returning melees will be jointed by a brand new charged attack known as Thunderclaps. So not only we're gonna have those returning melees that we already know, the shoulder charge and the slam, but we're gonna be getting another melee known as Thunderclap. Here the Titan player holds the melee button down and charges up arc energy that can be unleashed in either quick powerful jab or held and built up to be unleashed in a furious one-punch man-style blast that will devastate an opponent. The charge state cannot be stored, and the Titan must be on the ground to charge the punch. The damage is significant. A 90% charge Thunderclap will one-shot a Guardian in PvP. From here, we move on to the 3 aspects coming in for the Titan, and we're going to be talking about the fragments coming in for all the classes, which is, I believe it's 4 of them, so make sure you guys stick around for that. The first aspect that we have for the Titan is called Touch of Thunder. Improves arc grenades in the following ways. First one, we got Flashbang. Fires an additional blinding impulse on its first bounce. Second one, Pulse Grenade. When the grenade damages an enemy, it creates an iconic trace for the Titan. Pulse Grenade damage increases over time as the grenade lingers after impact. Third grenade, Lightning Grenade. Grants an additional charge of Lightning Grenade and jolts targets on its initial blast. Fourth grenade, we have Storm. Creates a roaming thundercloud that moves and tracks enemies. Moving on to the second aspect for the Titan, this one is called Juggernaut. While sprinting and with full class ability energy, the Titan gains frontal shield that blocks incoming damage. When amplified, the shield is stronger. Once the shield is depleted by taking damage, the player's class energy is depleted. Third aspect for the Titan is called Knockout. Melee kills trigger health regeneration and make the Titan amplified. Critically wounding an enemy or breaking their shield increases melee and damage for a brief period. Titan's base melee becomes arc empowered while knockout is active. And finally, here we're gonna be taking a look at the fragments coming in for all the classes. And fragment number 1, we have Spark of Beacon. I believe these are not all the fragments, there should be more coming in, but the first one we got is Spark of Beacon. When the player is amplified, arc special weapons kills create a blinding explosion. Moving on to fragment number 2. This one is called Spark of Resistance. When surrounded by enemies, the player has increased damage resistance. Doesn't say the percentage, doesn't give us the amount, but that's what we have. Third fragment that we have coming in is called Spark of Momentum. Sliding over ammo will reload your weapon and grant a small amount of melee energy. Sliding over heavy ammo increases the amount of energy granted. Finally, Spark of Shock, which is the 4th fragment coming in with arc, and this one says the player's arc grenade jolts enemies. And that's it. That's all we have for Arc 3.0. Thank you for watching. Catch you guys later. Peace.